labor migration to the wild berry industry. I missed some of Rainer's presentation. Unfortunately, I was teaching, but I think you said something about labor, but not so much. That's how I got it. But from my perspective, I've been studying this since 2011. I think that labor is one of the main challenges to the wild berry industry. Cheap labor is the business idea, and it also includes a high risk for exploitation. And that makes a big problem for the industry, also in business, in terms of business. We have both in Sweden and Finland recent cases in trial, and they have also been convicted for for exploitation. So this is quite a challenge for the industry. This is just a picture. It's a bit outdated now, but that's what I got, showing how berry picking and the picking of berries large scale has decreased or changed across time. Swedish pickers has decreased. The number of Thai pickers has increased and become quite dominating. If you see here, we can see that there are two parallel trends that have been going on. This was in 2019. Since then, the share of Thai berry pickers in Sweden has been much higher than the European berry pickers. European berry pickers have come from Ukraine, from Roma minority population from Bulgaria. But in the barometer, which me and John Andersson did from RISE, we saw that only 8% of the berries were picked by European pickers. So this has decreased a lot, except for this year now, 2024, which I will come back to. There were other things happening. Right. I was asked to talk a bit about the global value chain. This is how we looked at it in 2013. Berries were picked, freezed and rinsed, distributed to the global labor market, refined for global production and consumed. And the berry pickers, of course, are here, foreign workers, very important. So the question is, has this changed? And I think our understanding of this chain has changed. And it comes a bit from the barometer, which me and John Andersson did, as I just mentioned. I will not go into the details in this slide. It's just to show you that this is the publication, so to say. But if we have this chain that I just showed you, what we saw in the barometer was that about 50% of the berries are not going in this global route, but it's distributed in Sweden, sold to the Swedish refinement market. And what is being done is simple products, mainly jam, consumed, for instance, by eating pulp or something. Another knowledge that we have quite much more about now than in 2013, when is increased knowledge on the berry pickers, the foreign workers. Yes. And this is, for instance, a picture on the migration industry, how it works. I will not go into all the details. It's not time for that. But we know that the relationship between the berry companies and the staff in Sweden and the staffing agency in Thailand is really important, and it can hide difficulties. And for instance, you can blame each other and say, no, it was not us, we didn't do it, it was the staffing agency in Thailand. Circumvention of rules has been quite common, that you don't pay taxes, for instance, in Sweden, but you try to take it back to Thailand. And also a quite low transparency. How is it working? How is the money used? And it's a ground for precarious workers. So I will go into the current situation now a bit. A shrinking industry, has Mats Wingborg said, the journalist who has followed the berry industry for as long as me, more or less. He goes there every year to monitor what it looks like. So the number of Thai berry pickers in 2024, this season, was only 1,200. It can be compared to the year before, when there were 5,300 Thai berry pickers in Sweden. as you can see, 1,200 berry pickers, and then 1,200 applications were also declined. And if you count here, if you compare to 2023, you can also see that quite many never applied even. As you can think about, we will come back to why that was the case. It was only one berry company who got their applications approved, and that was only after appeal to the Swedish Migration Court. First, all companies in Sweden got no. And then this company said, but yes, you're not judging us correct. And then they got the right to get their 1,200 pickers, more or less. So there was a strong hesitation among companies to hire workers in Sweden today. And not only hesitation, but also then declines. And this was due to two things. A changed migration regime in Sweden, which aims to decrease the number of low-wage migrants. Increased salary requirements have been, in 2023, there was the demand that they would have at least 27,000 crowns as their salary, the salary wage, you can say. And it was then also increased in 2024. And this is quite high. And means also that companies were hesitant due to this policy to hire workers. However, there was also, which some companies says was the major reason why they didn't want to hire workers, the strengthened implementation of already existing rules from the Swedish Migration Agency. So there were already sharp regulations, but they had not been practiced previous years. But now they were practiced. They say, no, but you don't do this, you don't do that. So then you're not allowed to take berry pickers. So that was the reason for many of these declines. And at the same time, the European berry pickers, as I said, they had strongly decreased. They were only 8% in 2021, but they increased again in 2024. We don't know how many. This is more what has been observed by the eyes, not by myself, but that's what at least Mats Wingborg writes in his reports. We will come back to this issue of European berry pickers soon. Okay. Then another issue then that I mentioned, the trials. There have been quite some tensions, both in Sweden and in Finland. I'm most familiar with the Swedish case. And there have been discussions and also court cases then. Are berry pickers subject to forced labor? In Sweden, it was the Åsele case. 2 entrepreneurs were accused for forced labor during the season of 2023. At that season, they had 150 berry pickers. 9 of them stayed in Sweden and filed a case. And this is crucial. If the berry pickers don't stay, they cannot file a case. That's also what happened with Polarica in Finland. I know that the berry pickers stayed. That was the reason why they could continue with this case. So back to Åsele, the prosecutor's arguments for why this was forced labor was that the workers were dependent, had a dependency situation towards the entrepreneurs in general. They were deceived in terms of salary and work time. They had been promised quite different conditions, both in terms of salary and work time, compared to what they got in Sweden. Their passports had also been taken. And then debt bondage, that they were highly indebted after this. Some other arguments that I have not read regarding this court case, but which also seem to be possible to argue are forced labor for berry pickers, is abuse of vulnerability, withholding of wages until they come home, and excessive overtime. These are all indicators from the ILO for forced labor. However, at the Court of Appeal, hovrätten, they were convicted for exploitation of labor, not for forced labor. They got 2 years and 6 months prison. I was actually at this court one day and listening myself. It was very interesting. And what happened now, just a month ago, was that the prosecutor appealed against this to the Supreme Court, the Högsta domstolen, and it has been approved, which is not so common. The prosecutor has asked, and she also asked during the trial in the Court of Appeal, why is this not forced labor? And that's what she wants the Supreme Court to take position towards. And it will be very important, I think, a prejudicial decision. There are many circumstances that applies to the industry in general, and not just to these two entrepreneurs that are in court. And it has, just very, very briefly, I can say that this process has made the migration industry and the berry industry, I would say, hold their breath. What's happening here? How can we go on? And it, of course, implies things for the future. I will come back to some future thinkings after Nils has presented.
So I was asked to talk about, give a brief overview of responses to labor migration of berry pickers in Sweden and Finland. And I will focus on migration policy and labor market arrangements. And this is, of course, measures primarily directed towards non-EU migrants or plant pickers. So I thought I would show a timeline to illustrate these measures. Sweden was first to take action when the Swedish tax agency in 2005 decided that berry picking should be seen as work, and thus obligating berry pickers and berry companies to pay taxes. This resulted in a widespread use of Thai staffing agencies, placing berry pickers' employment in Thailand to avoid these taxes. In connection with this, in 2007, the Swedish Migration Agency also started implementing work permits for berry pickers, previously traveling on tourist visas. And the industry organization called the Forest Berry Interest Association was given a prominent role in the administration of these work permits. They, for example, decided criteria to be fulfilled for berry companies inviting berry pickers, and thereby perform tasks traditionally performed by the migration agency. So this was the first wave of measures in Sweden, but after a very turbulent season in 2009, a string of new measures were taken in 2010 and 11. In 2010, the Swedish Municipal Workers Union became responsible for berry pickers, and this meant that berry pickers were covered by the Agricultural Workers Collective Agreement, and it has since regulated the working hours and ensured a minimum wage, even though the berry pickers are not paying members. And in 2011, the regulation of work permits for berry pickers was also re-embedded to be part of the same general administrative process as all other work permits applications in Sweden. So the industry organization was lifted out of the work permit process, and its influence was removed. And other parts of the administrative process were also taken back from embassies abroad to Swedish work permit units. And what is more, the Swedish berry companies at this time also became entitled to demonstrate their ability to pay workers in advance, and staffing agencies became obliged to register a local branch in Sweden. If we go to initial methods in Finland, from the autumn of 2014, the Finnish Ministry of Economic Affairs and Employment introduced a letter of intent for picking natural products. The letter of intent was not a formal law, but meant that berry companies were requested to commit to certain standards of operations, for example, regarding reasonable recruitment costs. But the berry pickers were at the same time allowed to continue to travel on tourist visas if these demands were followed. However, in Finland, the recognition of continuous province led to a second wave of measures. As the law that Rainer mentioned, they continued down the road of separate arrangements, and the law on the legal status of foreigners collecting natural products, the so-called berry law, was passed in 2021. This law clarified the obligations of berry companies and gave the Finnish Occupational Health and Safety Authority supervisory rights of berry picking, but only regarding some elements. For berry pickers traveling on tourist visas without employment relationships, it, for example, gave supervisory rights over berry companies' responsibilities to provide picking equipment and training, as well as their obligations to inform pickers about their legal position and the minimum purchase prices and where they can find legal aid. The law also prohibited charging berry pickers for recruitment-related services, but did not regulate minimum compensation or working hours or working conditions. So if we move, and then if you talk about the recent the events in 2023 that Lasse was talking a little bit about, Sweden got a new salary amount for work permits. The wage necessary to be granted a work permit is then set higher than the one in berry pickers collective agreement, and it's suggested to be increased in 2025. And the Swedish Migration Agency also started doing follow-up checks on work permits and rejecting future applications from berry companies that they considered had previously misbehaved. And in 2023, a group of Swedish authorities also started performing joint workplace inspections. If we go to Finland, for the season of 2024, the Finnish Ministry of Foreign Affairs decided that no Schengen visas should be granted by the Finnish embassy in Bangkok, thereby hindering Thai berry pickers from coming to Finland. And the goal was to halt the flow of berry pickers until proper labor rights could be ensured. And this is a solution that some berry pickers themselves have also propagated for during demonstrations in Thailand. And during this blockade, an investigation was commissioned to explore a possible solution. And this investigation led to changes in migration policy and a permanent stop to picking berries commercially on tourist visa in Finland. From the season of 2025, foreign pickers will need a work permit for seasonal work in unemployment relationships to pick berries commercially. And this means that the general labor market regulations regarding minimum compensation, working hours, and condition applies and can be supervised by the Finnish Occupational Health and Safety Authority. So I think this was an overview. I think maybe if you want to summarize it in a little bit broader terms, you can say that historically Sweden has taken more measures in regard to migration policy. Finland have been more directed towards labor market policy and specific arrangement for the berry industry. I think something that was not part of the timeline, but I think is worth mentioning, is also that Finland has a more developed victim support targeting exploited berry pickers. And this aspect has over time had a stronger political focus in Finland, and there's, for example, a national helpline for exploited berry pickers and a broader involvement of civil society organizations supporting berry pickers. So that was my part. I think I will hand on back to Lotta now, right?
So just something very quick on some forward-looking perspectives. So I think the wild berry industry is at the crossroads now because of all these turbulent changes that me and Nils have been talking about. We have a lot of challenges. We already talked about them all. Just say reputation after trials are difficult, migration policy, the implementation of regulations, the judgment of the industry as exploitative or forced labor. Also the world market for wild berries, which is explained as quite sharp and tight. And also the situation in the home country for the migrant workers. Now I don't get the pic. Yeah, here. So it's challenging, reputation of the trials, what happens. And as I think I already said, I am running out of time, so I just kind of skip this and go to this. So if we have these challenges, what kind of alternative ways forward can we then have? I think that we have 3. 1, business as usual. 2, an increased number of European workers. Or 3, a radical transformation of the wild berry industry. And I have a cat here, and you will soon get the explanation why. Business as usual. If you would continue along that road, I think it looks difficult considering all the changes. However, the industry has found loopholes before. There are serious challenges regarding social sustainability, but transformative work is going on, for instance, through the ethical trade initiative, employer pays principle. So the question is, does the cat have 9 lives? And are we at the 9th life now? Will it continue or not? This industry as we know it today. Increased number of European workers. That has happened this year. However, I don't believe that this is the future for the wild berry industry. They are considered less efficient. So in this kind of from a market perspective, I don't think that this is how the industry will continue. Also, the situation in Ukraine is challenging, for instance, and there are serious problems with human rights considering the European workers. They are traveling semi-organized, and they are very vulnerable, often vulnerable minorities in their home countries, such as the Roma minority. Very difficult in many ways. So we also have my third alternative, a radical transformation of the wild berry industry. Very quickly then. Of course, this is to look at something quite different than what we have today. Will there be alternative organizations of how to have, who will work, who will pick berries, and how will they travel here? How will they be employed? Can they be employed in Sweden and Finland instead of in their home country as today? Can they travel on their own as cooperatives? Can we have local pickers in the home country, as Gun and her project in Bygden has showed can be possible? Can we have an industry based on refined high-end products, but then mind the migrant workers, continue to remember the social rights, even if we have some kind of fancy production in our own country? And lastly, social entrepreneurship and non-profit-based business models, prioritizing social values before economic revenue. That's, of course, something quite different than what we have today.